Hi there, fish tankers. For a long time, for many years, I just gave up on growing living plants in my aquarium. I just couldn't get it right. They kept on dying on me. So I went the Plastis planticus route and I just got some artificial plants. And I kept fish much like these goldfish with the most realistic looking plastic plants I could find. To be fair, some were plant eaters, so it wouldn't have worked anyway. But that's how I kept fish for a long time. Just concentrated on the fish and then use artificial plants as decoration. But over the years I got better. I first learned how to grow some simple epiphytes that attach to the hardscape, like the Java moss and Anubias and Java fern that you see here in the previous reincarnation of my big tank. But over the years I got much better, and now I grow quite a lot of plants in a low-tech fashion. But it's a knowledge thing, and I wish I knew some things earlier. It would have made life easier for me. What are those 6 tips that I wish I knew earlier with regard to keeping plants? Stick around and find out. Now firstly, some of the plants we are sold, like this white ribbon plant, are not aquatic plants at all. They're terrestrial bog plants. They'll do well in a paludarium or a terrarium in that boggy environment, but they don't grow underwater. They just die and rot away and foul your tank. Here's the white ribbon plant again, that is known also as a lucky bamboo sometimes. And if it looks too rigid, if it looks like a tree, if it looks like it needs to be above water, then it's likely that it is. And here's another plant that's not really an aquatic plant. That's the one with the dark green leaves and the purple under the leaves, quite an attractive looking plant, the purple waffle plant. This will also not grow underwater. It will just wither away and die. So stay away from these. Then some plants need to convert from emerged growth to submerged growth, like these Amazon sword, needle leaf Amazon sword plants. They've been grown emerged out of water because they grow quicker. And once they're underwater, those needle leaves will start wilting away and they will change and look completely different. They'll become more a natural looking underwater, elongated type of leaf running along the stems. So you need to be patient. They will die back initially, but they will recover, and then you'll have a very nice plant. Then take the plants out of the pots. These rooted plants or many other plants come in these little plastic perforated pots in rock wool. And I used to just stuff them into the substrate and they grew well enough, but that's not the way to go. I think Aquarium Co-op's got an easy planter you put them into, and at least they put root tabs in it, but I also think that's not a good idea. Take them out, remove the rock wool and plant them in the substrate if they are in fact rooted plants and not something like epiphytes. Then they can get to the nutrients, and you don't want the rock wool in your tank because over time it disintegrates and it forms these fine fibers and it just pollutes your tank and it can irritate the fish's gills. It's just something you don't want in your tank. So remove the plants carefully from the rock wool, and you can wash that last bit of rock wool. You can use some planting tweezers to remove it, and you can wash it out under the running tap, and then you just plant it in the aquarium. Now I used to also think that fish poop is enough to fertilize plants, but I quickly learned that it's not, and that is also that different plants need different food. And initially I used liquid fertilizer, I still do. Guys, please smash that like button, it will greatly help the content get out there. Now liquid fertilizer works great for plants that feed from a water column like these Anubias, which grows on driftwood, as well as the Java fern also attached to some spiderwood, and this massive clump of Wassertang with a bulbitis sticking out there that also doesn't grow in a substrate. They feed well from a water column, so they like liquid fertilizer, as does this Bucephalandra. And also stem plants that we do plant in a substrate, but they don't have highly developed root systems. They feed from the water column too. So your Bacopa and Ludwigia and Altananthera do fine with liquid fertilizer. But these rooted plants like these Cryptocorynes that grow with their roots in the substrate, that have developed root systems, and this forest of Vallisneria, they need the nutrients from the substrate, and this Amazon sword plant is definitely a heavy root feeder, needs to get the nutrients from the substrate. Liquid fertilizer is not going to cut it. So how do we do this? The most common one is root tabs or root sticks that you just insert around the base of a plant. Some people put it on a grid pattern on the empty base of a tank and then put the sand or gravel over that. I'm not a huge fan of this. This is an economical and easy way to do it, but I've never had great success with this method. I think maybe I haven't been using the right brand or the right kind of product, but that's one way. And the other way, the easiest way, is aqua swell, because you don't have to wash it out like gravel. You can just put it in the tank. And you've got the cheaper ones like the Easter aqua swell and then the longer, but even they are quite pricey, so that's a drawback. You get the more expensive ones like Denelay, and then the granddaddy of them all, the ADA Amazonia, and these are very convenient but very expensive, unfortunately. And then a method that I use, which is very cheap, is a dirted substrate. And that's simply a layer of swell there on the bottom, no more than 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, capped off by 5 centimeters of sand on top. And that is a cheaper way to grow rooted plants. Everybody has a slightly different way. You can use potting soil. I use a combination of peat potting soil and compost and a bit of bone meal. Then the other misnomer is that you need injected CO2, carbon dioxide, to be able to grow plants. Now, you don't need CO2 to grow plants. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great having it, but you don't need it. You know, CO2, like this tank, will make your plants grow much faster, much more dense, and this wonderful red colors you're not going to get without CO2 with my sort of low-tech way. And you're also not going to have this huge variety of plants that you'll be able to grow with CO2. But you can do it pretty well, like you see here in my tanks. I've got a nice variety of plants going there, and there is no CO2 injection here. People always wonder and ask me, but no, there's no CO2. And the other thing is, you don't need the fanciest lights like these ADA lights or the Chihiros. They are great lights, don't get me wrong, it's on my bucket list. But you don't absolutely need them to grow plants, you just need a light. Here you see I have a full spectrum light, but it's a much cheaper version. This is not quite full spectrum, but it does work for plants. And this is just a plain white LED light, and still I'm able to grow decent plants in that. And if you look closely here, and you look at that piece of Vallisneria, look at the oxygen bubbles coming out of it. It's purling, and this is with low-tech lights and no CO2. Guys, please share the content among your fishy friends. I would greatly appreciate that, and tell me what your experience has been with planted tanks. Please remember to subscribe, and until we see each other again, take good care of those domestic denizens of the deep.